Why should you choose Nolf Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fairmont City? Why wouldn't you choose them? At Nolf, their sales are speedy and include upfront and straightforward pricing. If it's service and parts you're after, they have skilled technicians who are factory trained while offering knowledgeable parts experts. Maybe you need Nolf's full service body shop offering top quality collision repair to all makes and models of cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Or do you want to cruise the highway in a clean, shiny vehicle thanks to Nolf's detailing service? No matter your needs, Nolf Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram in Fairmont City is there for you. Find out more at nolfchryslerdodge.com. Welcome to another edition of Nolf Bites here live from Nolf Chrysler Jeep Dodge and Ram in Fairmont City. I'm Chris Rossetti. I'm alongside the defensive master Ronnie Geist and Andy Byers, and another week, another defensive breakdown for Ronnie's team. 67 points, Ronnie?
Give or take, yeah.
Still the best two-loss team in the district.
Yeah, we're just baiting the other teams in.
Make them think that they can run the ball. You've got a secret defense that you're ready to throw out there.
Yeah, we're going to sneak an extra guy on a couple times. And
well, you know, with some of these officials, you might be able to get away with that.
Did you see anything cool this week with the officials?
Nah. Then again, I saw a game that was 67-0 or whatever it was, 63-0, I guess it was.
That was close for a quarter, right?
Well, only because Central Clarion only had the ball once. They had the punt in the game. I mean, that was sort of news. You know, it was only the second time they've punted all season. They punted twice all year. Twice.
Sounds about right.
Twice. They punted twice. I had to look up to see who the punter was. Thomas Euchert also does the punting for them. And you know, Jace Ferguson continues to rewrite the record books.
8 touchdowns?
Yeah, 8 touchdowns. Named player of the week this week. Had
pick six.
Had a pick 6. Also ran for a touchdown. Threw 6 touchdown passes. Now has 125 touchdown passes. He needs 12 more to tie Matt Bodermer for the District 9 record. Moved into 3rd place passing. I don't think he's going to get the passing record. It's still sitting 2,400 yards away. It's a lot of yards to get. I mean, they'd have to make a deep run. They could make a deep run. I think at some point, though, if they make a deep run, they're not going to put up like PlayStation numbers, though.
He's a senior?
Yeah.
He's doing that all while playing defense every
Yeah, he's playing defense every play. Yeah. Playing safety. Had a like I said, had a pick 6. I mean, it was thrown right to him. And then he went down the sideline for 36 yards. Touchdown. It was right after they called a timeout, though, up 42-0 with like a minute something to go in the first half. Your feelings on that, Ronnie?
He was still in?
Well, I don't care that he was still in. I care about the timeout, I guess.
I think you got to kind of feel the game up a little bit in that circumstance. It's hard to tell. Generally speaking, I know I'm always a guy that wants to get certain players out early.
Yeah, and I'm not really concerned about the player being in. I'm more concerned about the idea that you're going to get anything if you get the ball back on a team that you've already scored 42 points on, and you've scored 35 of those points in the quarter already. I mean, you're not going to run a 2-minute offense that's going to mean anything at any point in time, other than maybe getting the reps to get up to the line, hurry. But you could do that at any point in the game if you wanted to.
Yeah, that would be the thing I would think of from the offensive standpoint is let's try to get some type of 2-minute feel going. Sometimes it's just about, offenses nowadays, they'll call 2 or 3 plays and they'll sprint to the huddle or sprint to the line, run the first play, sprint to the line, run the second play, third play. They don't care what the result is. So it could be a mindset from the coaching staff of, what happened after he intercepted it and scored the touchdown.
Yeah, he intercepted it, scored a touchdown,
so
and then
it was a moot point.
Yeah, it was a moot point. They didn't get the ball back. I mean, again, the interception would have happened either way. I mean, I can look at it the other way too. Brockway didn't have to be throwing the ball there either. Go into halftime, you're down 42-0, take your licks, go into the locker room, figure out, what you did right on your first drive and what you didn't do right from that point forward.
Yeah, you could make the argument Brockway just run the ball 3 times and punt.
But I think they threw it because the timeout was taken. Like they had run it on first down, and then they figured, well, if we're going to take timeout, then we're going to throw the ball. And then they threw the pick 6, and then it is what it is. I don't know. Again, different philosophies from different people. I'm not saying Davey Eggleton, the head coach, is wrong and I'm right. Davey very well might be right and I could be wrong. We have different philosophies. That's all.
I'm sure if he was sitting here, he could make an argument regardless of what his way of
I'm sure he
thinking
could.
was.
Yeah, I'm absolutely, again, it's neither here nor there. It's not like it changed the outcome of the game at all. I mean, one team was 1,000 times better than the other team.
Which AA football across the state, they got a legitimate team that can push it.
They do. I mean, Southern Columbia is way down this year. Farrell's okay. I think Farrell's a lot better. Somebody asked me today, Farrell's way down. And I'm like, I don't know if they're way down. I just think they played such a difficult schedule. And see, that's what I think like about Farrell. If I was picking Farrell versus Central Clarion right now, I like the fact that they challenged themselves. They played Cathedral Prep. They played Sharon. They played that team from Ohio that's really good. Who's Central Clarion played? They're going to play Butler in the final week of the season. Big deal. Butler didn't even want to play in the WPIL. You know what I'm saying? Like, they haven't really, and it's not their fault that the whole league is down, but the whole league is down. I don't see anybody on that schedule that makes me go, oh my gosh, this, like, DuBois is having a nice year for DuBois. It's going to be one of the nicest years they've had. Then they go into the 5A sub-regional play. What are they going to do in 5A? Playing a bunch of AA and AAA schools, like. It's really hard for DuBois because they played those few years up in District 10 where they played against against competition was the same level as them, and they got crushed. But then they come back here into District 9 and they're playing a bunch of teams that are AA and AAA, and that doesn't really get you prepared to play 5A football. And they have a nice team. We just don't know how nice of a team they have. And that's the same thing with Central Clarion. We can see the scores. We know what's happening there, right? But they were doing the same thing last year. And then they got into the state playoffs against Westinghouse, and, they were able to put up points, but they also gave up a bunch of points because they hadn't really been tested defensively all season. And again, I guess there's really nothing you can do about that other than go play an independent schedule if you knew you're going to be that good. And that's not really something you could actually do.
Yeah. There, where it becomes an issue is like, Burford, he's hurt now, but, fast forward a few weeks here in the second round of playoffs, whatever it is, somewhere there's going to be a team that maybe not one-on-one can take him away, but with some help from the safety, now they can kind of eliminate your number one guy. And now because of the weaker schedule, does that number two guy have enough?
Well, I think actually that's something that was a positive for them on Friday night was Burford was out and Jesse Sawicki stepped up and showed that he was a lot better than I think anybody thought. Like, Jesse Sawicki had himself a game. 3 catches, 128 yards. He was getting behind the defense. One thing that Brockway has is some athletes in that secondary. And so the fact that Sawicki was able to get behind the defense there, I think that's going to be a positive for the Wildcats moving forward. That now all of a sudden you get Sawicki out there, you get Rex out there, and you get Burford out there, and you have to worry about Ferguson and Harrison running the football. Now it's a pick your poison thing. And that could be, so in this case, an injury to Burford at this time of the season might have actually been an extra benefit because they may have found something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they look good. I don't know. It's really hard to gauge when you start talking about the competition and everything. Put them up against Karn City. Did Karn City play a bad game against them? You've seen what Karn City did to Red Bank.
Well, look at what DuBois has done to everybody, and they took DuBois behind the woodshed at the end of the day, and so they could be that good. The only thing we don't know is, are they that good? Like, it's only going to be proven in the state playoffs where they're at. We could be sitting here 2 months from now talking about a state championship team. We could be sitting here a month from now talking about a team that went out in the first round of the playoffs. We don't know yet. That's what we're going to find out, I guess. And I guess that's kind of the joy of it, right? Like, you don't know.
Speaking of a tough team, I said last week, Union keeps getting better every week.
You were right there, weren't you? What a win for them. What a crazy final 5 minutes of that game. Punksy's down 10 with under 6 minutes to play, scores back-to-back touchdowns to go up. And then Union AC all starts with, we talk about special teams, right? And Punksy's got a really good kicker, but I don't know if he slipped, if they told him to kick it short. And instead of just kicking it and booting it out of the end zone for a touchback, which, we talk about how big that is, right? he hits an up man with the kickoff. And so now all of a sudden they're getting the ball in plus territory to start a drive in which they need to score a touchdown. And that's hard. That's really putting the defense behind the 8 ball when the other team's starting in plus territory.
And they scored with 8 seconds left, right?
No, they scored with like 20 something.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was like 26, I think. And then Punksy actually had a couple of passes down and thought, well, maybe they could even get into field goal range. They tried a 53-yard field goal at the end of the half. Punksy did 53-yard field. That's the kind of this is what I'm going back to. You have a kicker who you're willing to send out and kick a 53-yard field goal, right?
How close was it?
He was probably, it was in the end zone close. Like it was halfway through the end zone, at least close. So you're willing to send a kid out to kick a 53-yard field goal. At the end of the game, just tell him to boot it out of the end zone. Off of the tee with nobody coming at him. If you think he can kick a 53-yard field goal, then I know he can kick the ball through the end zone.
But again, this goes back to what I talked about last week. Sometimes you just don't want those deep guys to touch the ball. You squib it. He hits a kid. And I know it happens, but I'm taking the percentages that he squibs it down the middle.
But if he puts the ball in the end zone, because of the high school rules where as soon as it crosses the goal line, it's an automatic touchback. I mean, what? You're telling me that a kid that you thought could kick a 53-yard field goal can't kick the ball 60 yards into the end zone?
Well, yeah, but at that point, at the end of the half, it's like, why not?
Yeah, but again, you think that you're still thinking he can make it. You're not sending him out there with the idea that he's going to miss it. Like you think that there's at least a little part of you that thinks the kid can make the field goal, right? You're not just sending him out and saying, hey, go kick it. If it kicks to the 20, who cares, right? Like at that point, you're going to throw the pass into the end zone. Or
can't they treat that like a punt? Not that
they can. Yeah, you could treat it like a punt. Yeah, in any level, you can treat it as a punt. Yeah. But I'm just saying, kick the ball deep, make the other team go 80 yards, force them into making a play.
If he kicks it deep and it goes to the 1 and someone from Union returns it to the end,
then it happens.
Having a different conversation.
Nah, because you know what? If a kid goes 99 yards for a touchdown, and I just tip the hat to the kid. When I've got over a minute to play and I'm saying to the other team, oh, you only have to go 45 yards to score. That's a whole different story. Just a whole different story. Just kick it deep.
It's fun to be able to sit here and have all the answers now,
isn't it? Well, that's what you do. If we weren't doing that, what would be the point of having this show?
Yeah. Listen, if you two have some answers on how to stop the run, I'll take it.
All right, did you try to get all your guys down on all 4 knees like Larry Weiser suggested? Have you tried that yet?
It's been brought up,
but you didn't do it yet.
Not completely. No.
You might want to try that. I mean, after all, Larry Weiser might be the smartest defensive coach to come through the history of Clarion County. You might want to take his advice on that one, Ronnie. Just saying. Like I know you've taken his advice on some other stuff that you guys do. Sure. Might want to try it. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? The same thing? What's the very definition of insanity?
Well, hey, we talk about this all the time.
The very definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, expecting different results. Port did it to you. Carn City did it to you. The next team that does it to you, try something different.
Well, we went into the game with a few different game plans. General, like, okay, if this happens, here's how we'll adjust. If that happens, here's how we'll adjust. And we do try to, and I'm sure I'm no different than any other coach, but we do try to game plan things according to our kids' strengths, right? Obviously, put them in the best situation possible. A lot of the kids fought like heck. But, in reality, we had, because of some injuries, we've got some linebackers that are 155 pounds playing linebacker. And no disrespect to them, but, Hayden Johnson played linebacker at 165 pounds, but we don't have a whole lot of Hayden Johnsons.
And any thought about putting Braylon Wagner on defense at all?
I've thought about it.
I mean,
over.
Again, at some point, if you're it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is if you're giving up 60 a game. And I'm not picking on you, Ronnie, or Blaine. No different than talking about what we're talking about with Punksy or anything else. Just think at some point, again, like if Central Clarion puts its best athletes on defense, Jace Ferguson's playing defense. I understand why you don't want Braylon Wagner to play defense, but at some point in time, if you don't have the horses that say you had a year ago, or even at the beginning of the season, then you have to consider taking your best athletes and putting them on that side of the football.
I agree, but do you if you're looking at the big picture from a district championship standpoint and a game doesn't matter, do you put Braylon out there right now for a Karn City or a Brookville or
I think at some point you're going to have to, you can't just stick him in at the end of the year and say against Port Allegheny in a district championship game and he hasn't played there all year and say, oh, go play it. I think that's asking a lot of anybody. I think that's asking a lot of a pro, let alone a high school kid.
Yeah.
I think at some point you have to get him some reps. You don't have to play him the whole game there, but I'd say that at some point you've got to think about it at least. And, I go back to the Port game and I realized they scored early, but Huffman was making a whole bunch of tackles early in that game. And then you guys moved him into a different position. And then he was silent the rest of the game and it didn't change what was happening. At least when he was playing in the middle back a little bit, he was able to make some tackles and the guys that replaced him there weren't. So I get the idea of moving guys around in that situation, but at some point in time, you got to look at it and go, because look, if I'm an opposing coach right now, and I'm playing Red Bank Valley, I don't care what I'm thinking. I'm going to just line up and say, hey, I'm going to beat you on the ground until you show me you can stop it. And if that means you got to put 11 guys within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage and dare them to throw the ball, then put 11 guys at the line of scrimmage and dare them to throw the football.
I would agree. I mean, if you're another team looking at us, we do the same thing to other teams. Where's their weakness? All right, that right tackle has problems when he pass sets. Okay, so when pass set circumstances, we're going to put one of our best guys there. Yeah, I mean, again, I think all the coaches in the district are good. So they're definitely going to look at prior games and say, this is an issue for them. They need to fix it. Or if they don't, we'll just continue to do it over and over. Now, Karn City's got some real studs up front. They got some big guys. We know Clarion obviously does. Port, it's been a few years that they've had some studs. I mean, you're not always going to be able to match up with them. And a lot of times you just try to put your best position or best people in the best position to make plays. And,
I think everybody gets scared, which I was scared Friday night, believe me. But if you look at the track record and the history, obviously the coaches know where to put the players in the right positions. And the thing is, sometimes you can try to game plan and think your way out of everything, but at the end of the day, a kid just has to make a tackle. And I think if you watch that game against Karn City, I know I've looked at it over and over again, and I'm not a coach. I'm just an angry parent trying to figure out what we did wrong. But kids are in position. The plays just weren't being made. And I think that it's really hard as a coach to figure out, how do I get them to make that tackle?
I think at some point it's up to the kid to not be embarrassed anymore.
Right.
I mean, seriously, I don't want to put it all on the kid, but at some point in time, you either want to have people talk about how terrible you are stopping the run, or you want to start stopping the run. And especially if you're telling me you're in position to stop the run, then it becomes about the fortitude of whether I want to stop the run. Do I want to take the hit? Do I want to play physical? And if I don't want to play physical, then what exactly am I doing out playing football? Like football is a physical game, and you've got to have that want to at some point in time.
Well, we do a clinic. We just recently started a clinic for the Pee Wee midget. They come up. We kind of help them with X's and O's and drills and things, and I've talked to a few of them. And, I believe that I can't teach kids to tackle. Tackle is, for lack of a better term, God-given. Something in you makes you a tackler. Now, I can teach you the proper way to tackle, but I can't make someone put their nose in there. And we've all seen kids that just get to the football. And when you have one of those kids, it's special. You watch Ferguson on film. There's times he's at linebacker, sprints to the secondary, tackles the football or knocks a play down. Like, those are the kind of things that kids get to the football with, and they just get there with bad intentions. And teaching that kid to tackle is the easiest thing in the world, man. Hey, yeah, let's teach you how to break down, get your feet back underneath you, explode through with your hips. There's things you can tell them, but ultimately it's about Jimmy's and Joe's.
It's always about Jimmy's and Joe's.
It doesn't matter if it's baseball, football, track, Jimmy's and Joe's.
It's always about Jimmy's and Joe's. If you don't look, the Steelers' offense right now isn't very good, not because of the offensive coordinator or the head coach or what. Got a bunch of guys. They don't have any studs. They have just a bunch of guys. And if you have a bunch of guys in your offense in the NFL, you're just not going to be any good. And the Steelers have a bunch of guys. Starts with the quarterback. He's just a guy. He's got the talent through the wazoo. But when you watch him play, he's just a guy. Like, he misses easy throws. He doesn't know where to throw the ball to sometimes. He gets stood up a yard short of the first down instead of figuring out it because he's running so high. You know, sometimes you got to get low if you're gonna pick up that extra yard or two. Same problem with the running back. The running back likes to run high, doesn't like to get low. And so if you only have a bunch of guys, you're not going to be any good. And it's even harder at the high school level because sometimes you only are going to have maybe out of 11 guys, you're lucky to have 4, especially at the small school level, 4 or 5 guys that are actual legitimate football players. The rest of them are just guys that are, you know, they're good, hardworking kids, but they're not really football players. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. You're talking about just guys on Sunday. I kind of joke like that offensive tackle that doesn't get the block that we all complain about on Sunday afternoon. He's the best athlete any of us have ever seen.
Yes.
Like he
100%.
is, even the third string guy that's holding the water cooler down.
Oh yeah.
Is the best athlete we've ever seen. Like, but you're right. You know, there's a lot of small schools, you know, we talk about how like football, the numbers are reducing in all these schools. You know, at the end of the day, obviously Clarion's an anomaly because they're so good. You know, you get those groups.
Yeah, you guys had a group at Red Bank that went to a state championship game a few years back like that.
In reality, these small schools, you're going to get groups of 5, 6, 7, if you're lucky, 8 pretty solid football players. You're going to win a lot of football games. You're going to win a lot of basketball tournaments. You're going to win a lot of volleyball matches. Like, you're just going to win with those good kids. A lot of times coaches' best job is just to get the heck out of the way.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it's just look, Port Allegheny's really good right now, right? They're going to graduate a lot of their offensive line after this year. How good are they going to be next year? I mean, I actually joked that maybe Aiden Bliss, who's going to be the leading rusher this year, might have to move to the offensive line because they might not have anybody else to play offensive line, you know, and they've got other guys that can play running back. At small schools, you go through ups and downs, and I think at Red Bank, the expectation level has reached that level where you expect to be great all the time. And it doesn't take into account for the fact that, my goodness, starting in 2001 or 2021 and moving forward, there's been some of the best athletes to ever come through the school have now graduated. And the fact that you're sitting through 7 weeks of football at 5-2 and people are like, well, what's wrong with Red Bank Valley? You know, like that just becomes an expectation thing. Kind of like last year, Karn City, and we all know what happened to Mason Martin. And thank God, you know, the kid seems to be improving on a daily basis now. But like, you know, I think that when Karn City has a down year, people are like, well, how could that even possibly be? Right? Because they're Karn City. Or when Clarion was just Clarion and they would have a down year. Well, how could that be? Well, I think that it's a good thing in a lot of ways that Red Bank has gotten to that point where people are like, oh my God, they're 5-2, but they've had 2 games where they've given up 60 plus. They're terrible. And in reality, they're not terrible. You're not terrible. You know, I kid you, but you guys aren't terrible by any stretch of the imagination. You're still a top 10 team in District 9. You know, you're not the top team. You're not the top 2 or 3, but you're probably in that 5 to 10 range. I think that's a fair assessment of where you're at right now. Maybe even a little better than that, maybe in the top 5. But the expectations were so high. And then you come out and you play the way you did in the first few weeks. And then people are like, oh, well, see, Red Bank didn't lose anything. When in reality, you graduate kids like the Klauses, you graduate a Chris Marshall, you graduate a Marquise. What was Marquise's last name? Gardlock. Yeah, I wanted to say Goodwin, but I knew that wasn't right. I was completely blanking it. You graduate a Bryson Bain. At some point, you just don't replace guys like that at small, tiny schools.
You don't, but you also don't want those other underclassmen to accept mediocrity through, well, we had a couple down years. Well, that's not okay. Like, we're building this to stay at a certain level.
But again, it comes down to the Jimmies and Joes, like you pointed out. If you don't have the Jimmies and the Joes in that underclassmen ranks, or as many of the Jimmies and Joes in those underclassmen ranks, you can say, hey, don't accept it, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day because they just are what they are. I always point to Keystone basketball when they have a year like I think last year where they won 5 or 6 games. Greg Heath didn't become an idiot as a head coach all of a sudden. He's still a really, really good head coach. And maybe they won more games than they should have because he's a really, really good head coach. But they were starting 2 freshmen. And when you're the best thing I can say, when you're a freshman, the best thing that happens to a freshman is to become a sophomore. Because I think about, 2 weeks ago, Xavier Schwentner of Brockway was our player of the game. And so we had some problems with the mic that you have, so I had to bring him up to the box. And it was the first time I'd seen Xavier since last baseball season. And when he was playing he's a DuBois Central kid, so he's playing for DuBois Central in baseball and was a starting third baseman. And he looked like a little freshman, right? Now he looks like a man. And that, you guys are starting some freshmen at Red Bank right now. The best thing about that is they're going to be sophomores next year and they're going to mature and they're going to get bigger. They're going to get stronger. It's asking a lot to put freshmen in key positions on a varsity football team, and especially on a varsity football team that has high expectations.
Yeah, I think Keystone's a prime example of that. You look at Keystone's lineup, they got how many sophomores, freshmen, juniors on that team? A year or two, they're pushing themselves to the top of the pile for sure. I would just, from a coach, from a competitor, like I never want to let, your foot off the throttle. Like you want, we're lucky that, to have Andy, like we want parents that are like, no, this isn't okay. Like you got to keep working hard. You got to go into the weight room. You got to do these other things. Like I can tell you from past experience, if you don't have the parents on your side, not just, hey, we believe in you, coach, but kind of, hey guys, like you got to get in there. You got to do the extra stuff. It's tough to build a program.
No question. And I think that you hope that the kids who are freshmen and sophomores don't like what's happening. Like when you have a game like Porter, you have a game like Karn City, and you can't change that in the middle of the season. They're not going to get remarkably stronger in the middle of the season. When they're going to get stronger is when the season ends in November. Getting in that weight room from November until next July, next August. That's how it's going to. So you hope that those kids don't like the feeling of what happened, say Friday night, and know that they have to put in the work. That's when you have something going on.
I think what you can change though is through mid-season is that the performance itself, I don't think is this team. I do think we have a lot of athletes still that did underperform on Friday night, and they would probably tell you that also. So I think you can raise that morale or change in that fashion. But you said it too, like how Red Bank's still 5-2. They lost to a team, Port Allegheny, that could probably will be in the district championship. Whether they'll win it or not, I don't think, because Red Bank, I'm counting on doing that. But
you're just giving them bulletin form. Hey, Justin Minkowski,
yeah.
Andy Byer says you have no shot at winning a district title.
No
shot at winning the district title. Put that on your bulletin board right now.
Yeah.
But you can still buy a truck from us. Come on down.
And as far as Karn City, I think I read somewhere that their coach said that the team they put on the field against Clarion wasn't them. And maybe there's some truth to that. They might have had an off night, and typically they would have put up a better fight against them, but it didn't pan out that way. And so I haven't counted Red Bank out yet. I still feel like there's a lot of fight in them kids, and I still think they're a good group of athletes. And you're talking like systems and stuff. You've got a pretty good JV team still out there. Our junior high team's doing really good. So I think there's still a lot of.
I think again, I don't think there's any issues at Red Bank. Hey guys, that's going to do it for our program today here from Nolf Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram in Fairmont City. Anything going on? New month, new specials?
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff right now. Big rebates on new trucks, over $7,000 off on some of our 3/4 tons and half-ton trucks. Jeeps also over 10% off on certain Jeep lines. So a lot of stuff going on out there. Come on down, Ronnie will make you a great deal. And he won't tell you things like you're getting a lifetime warranty that you'll never get, but he'll be an honest guy to you. So
Website, Ronnie?
www.nolfchryslerdodge.com.
There you go, folks. Come on down or check out their inventory online. Till next week, this is Chris Rossetti saying good night for Ronnie Geist and Andy Byers. You've been watching Nolf Bites.